Hi, that was the first few bars of the great jazz standard Misty by Errol Garner, arranged at 7 different levels. In this new series, I'm going to look at various techniques that we can use when arranging jazz standards for the piano. I'm going to use a step-by-step approach, and for each standard, I'll be using material from Tomplay at various levels. Tomplay recently sponsored me, and I did a review of their library of thousands of pieces of music, including many jazz standards. If you haven't seen that review, I've put a link for it in the description below. I've also put an affiliate link for Tomplay in the description below, and you can try it out completely free for 14 days. You get full access to all of their music. If you decided not to continue, then it's very easy to cancel. If you did decide to subscribe, I would receive a small commission from them. Step 1. Now, lots of teachers will give you this advice. Even if you're an advanced player, when you're learning a new jazz standard, play through it a few times with just the melody in the right hand and the root note only in the left hand. This is going to give you a great feeling of the root progression, which is so important. Now, I've mentioned this several times in other videos, but there is often confusion between the term root note and bass note. The root note is the note on which a chord is built and then named after. So if we take the note C, add a note 3 letter names above it, E, 5 letter names, G and 7 B, we get a C major 7 chord. We call C the root, E the 3rd, G the 5th and B the 7th. Now, the bass note is simply the lowest note that's being played at any one time. And in jazz, we tend to play chords in root position most of the time. So therefore, the root note and the bass note most of the time are the same. But I think it is important to understand that it's 2 different terms meaning 2 different things. If you took, say, a G7 chord, but you played the note B down in the bass, we would say that's in first inversion. If we played the note D, the 5th of the chord, down in the bass, we would say it's in second inversion. And if you played the 7th down in the bass, above the top 3 notes there, you would say that is in third inversion. In each of those cases, the note G is still the root note, but the bass note changes each time we use a different inversion. Step 2. First of all, let's just have a word about the melody. A lot of classical pianists, when they first start reading from a lead sheet, feel as though they've got to play every note exactly as written. Now, you've got to get rid of that idea when you're playing a jazz standard. You're perfectly free to change the rhythm of the melody and also occasionally the actual notes of the melody, and you can embellish it. You can add extra notes to it. So, for instance, right at the beginning, the pickup, instead of just being 2 8th notes, it's a dotted 8th note followed by a 16th note. And then at the end of the second bar, instead of going, it's now. Those little tweaks can make quite a difference. Now, the next thing is just adding some extra notes. So instead of just having the melody and the root note, we're adding at least one other note somewhere. Now, which note to choose and where to put it is important. So if you take the pickup itself, what we've got in the left hand there is what we call a shell voicing. It's the root and the 7th. Now, for the C major 7, the left hand has got the root and the 3rd now. The 7th is already in the melody, and the 5th of a major 7th or a dominant 7th chord, as long as it's not an altered 5th or a minor 7th, can be missed out without changing the sound of the chord, really. If it was a minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished or a diminished 7th, you would need the 5th there, but not in a major or minor or dominant 7. Now, look at the left hand. You've got root and 7th going to root and 3rd. So whenever the root progression is down a fifth, now what we mean by that is the root note of one chord goes down 5 letter names to the root note of the next chord. Now in this case we've got G coming up to C, and you might be thinking, hang on, that's going up 4 rather than down 5. Doesn't matter, if you count it going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we say it's down a fifth, going up 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's the same progression. Now whenever you get that, it's a good idea to have root and the seventh going to root and third. The seventh has a sort of natural feeling of tugging, wanting to go down, resolve onto the third. So you get good what we call voice leading. Now if you look in the second bar, I've put a circle around the B flat on the G minor 7 and on the C7, and then in the third bar on the A for the F major 7. And again, this is all about what we call voice leading. If you think about choirs, when you have soprano, alto, tenor and bass, each member of the choir has to sing a note that is part of the chord that you're on, but their part, their individual part, must be smooth and as melodic as it can be. So you don't want to be zigzagging about. Generally speaking, you want to go to the nearest available note in the next chord, or if a note is common to 2 chords in succession, then keep the note in the same place. So again, we've got a root progression, G minor 7 to C7, down a fifth, G to C is down 5 letter names, and the third of G minor 7 remains and becomes the 7th of C7. That's a really important general principle for voice leading. The root progression is then followed by another down a fifth to F major 7, and the 7th of C7 drops to the 3rd of F major 7. By the way, you can annotate the sheet music in Tomplay and then store the annotated version in Tomplay, which as a teacher I find really helpful. Bar 5 is quite interesting. If you look at the chord symbols, you've got F minor 7 followed by B flat 7, and you're expecting something like this. But what you actually get is this. Which is quite a nice sort of dissonance there. Now, F minor 7 followed by B flat 7 is another down a fifth chord progression. And whenever you get a minor 7 chord followed by a dominant 7th whose root is a perfect fifth below it, we call that a 2-5 progression. It's chords 2 and 5, but borrowed from a different key. It's borrowed from the key of E flat. Now, whenever you get that progression, you can substitute it, which is what the arranger Mike Garson has done here, with just simply chord 5, but often with a suspension on chord 5. He's not actually put the suspension in. He has used that later on in arrangement, so I will come to that bit. But in this one, he's just put this change of the melody, which is really effective. So instead of F minor 7 there, he's gone straight to B flat 7, and he's put E in the melody. Now that's a flattened fifth of B flat 7. That's B flat. The fifth is B flat 7, sorry. The fifth is F, the flattened fifth is E. Goes up to G, which is the 13th, and then back to the 13th there, which is part of the melody, of course. Bar 6 is done this, the left hand just root and fifth for C major 7, and again for A minor 7. I think I would have preferred to go put the major 7th in there, and then the minor 7th there. So you've got the root, the major 7th and 3rd, and then root, minor 7th and 3rd, complete chords. Now, if we look at this line beginning on bar 17, we've got something very interesting happening in the left hand. I'll just play that line. Okay, now on the G minor 7 chord in bar 18, we've got G in the bass going to F sharp. So where does the F sharp come from? Well, it's part of a jazz cliche that we call a moving line on a minor 7th chord. That's a G minor 7 chord. If you just played it as an ordinary G minor chord and repeated the root an octave higher, you very often hear this little line, the root going down to the major 7. So at that point we've got a minor triad with a major 7th. That's like a tonic minor chord rather than a 2 minor 7. And then it drops to the minor 7th. And then usually after that it would go to the 3rd of C7, the dominant 7th chord. Now, you might wonder about the 3rd bar of that line, that's bar 19, because we've got F in the bass at the beginning of the bar, and the chord symbol is C7. So F definitely isn't in C7. However, I think the way the arranger is thinking here, and this is something that we do ever such a lot in jazz, when you've got a bar in 4-time with a dominant 7th chord for the whole bar, very often we harmonise the first half of the bar, not with a dominant 7th, but with 2 minor 7 from that key. Now, C7 is dominant 7th in the key of F, and chord 2 minor 7 in the key of F major is G minor 7, which is in the previous bar. So really the thinking behind that is that the G minor 7 lasts for all of bar 18 and then the first half of bar 19, and then finally goes on to C7 halfway through that bar, so that we get this lovely moving line. Now that moving line you hear at the top of chords like that. You hear it all the time. Sometimes it continues, by the way, to the E, not over the dominant 7th, but still on the minor chord, and then you get what we call a minor 6th chord. Sometimes you hear it at the bottom of the chord like that. And it's very effective. In bar 17, rather, he precedes that with a couple of bass notes from the C major 7 chord. It's got the major 7th dropping to the 6th, which then continues by stepping to this moving line. So that makes it even more effective. And another thing you notice, you've got this contrary motion between melody and the bass there. The melody is going up, the bass notes coming down. Contrary motion between melody and bass is always effective. You can't do it all the time, because you would end up crashing in the middle, or you'd end up falling off the edge of the keyboard either side. But wherever you can fit it in, it's always effective. In bars 21 and 22, there's a couple of little tweaks to the rhythm that are quite effective. In bar 21, we're on an F major 7 chord. You've got the root note down in the bass, and it's a whole note, lasts for the whole bar. But on the upbeat of beat 3, it's repeated an octave higher. So just listen to the effect rhythmically. It just gives it that feeling of forward motion a bit. Now in the next bar, F sharp minor 7 going to B7, you could just put the 7th there in between the melody and the bass, and then resolve it onto the 3rd of B7 there. But what he's done here is this. That little bit of rhythm keeps the thing moving, makes it a little bit more interesting. Now in this line, starting with bar 29, when we get onto the B flat 7 chord, you notice that the left hand does a series of root and 7th, shell voicings. So for B flat 7, root and 7, C major 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, G7. That's particularly effective from in bars 30 and 31, because if you look at the melody, the melody, each time the chord changes, the first note of the new chord in the melody is the third of that chord. C major 7, we've got E the third, A minor 7, C the third, D minor 7, F the third, and G7, B the third. So in each case, we've got the essential notes of major, minor and dominant seventh chords. That is the root, the third and the seventh. Okay, I hope you found this helpful. In the next video, I'll be carrying on with Misty, going through some more of the more advanced techniques used in arranging. If you haven't done so far, I'd be really grateful if you could give the video a thumbs up and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.